Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Layla, and today's video is just a casual money chat / Q&A. I will put timestamps for this video so you can pick and choose what you want to watch and hop around if you prefer to. This is just going to be me chatting, and I do tend to be quite chatty for certain topics, so it will probably be a long video. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about just because they're relevant. They're things that I've been thinking about or feeling basically related to finance. And then I do have a number of questions that I received. I posted in my YouTube community saying that I was going to be filming a money chat Q&A video, and I appreciate all of y'all who asked some questions or just some recommendations for things for me to talk about. So I'll be going through those as well. I'm going to start with some feelings of FOMO around my Roth IRA. And the FOMO comes in, which if you don't know, FOMO is fear of missing out, but that comes in for the fact that I am not able to completely max out my Roth IRA just right now. Like, I want to be able to do it in a lump sum. I was able to do that last year for the first time ever. I maxed out my Roth IRA, all 7,000, just in one day. I did it on January 3rd because I had to wait for the money to transfer over. But I really liked doing that, and I'm not able to do that this year. Technically, I can, which I'll talk about, but me not doing that this year, it's giving me this sense of FOMO. Enough that it's bothering me on a daily basis at this point. I actually ended up posting a question in the Choose FI Facebook group, which is a great Facebook group, by the way, for just, if you want to ask questions or read what other people are posting about and you can answer questions, whatever. It's just very interesting to be a part of that group. And the other day I had posted in there asking for just like thoughts and opinions. Like, I know ultimately this decision is up to me, but I just wanted some feedback from other people, and basically for people to tell me not to do what I was thinking to do is ultimately what I just wanted to hear. Despite me being a financial coach, there's sometimes where I want confirmation from other people about what I'm thinking, or basically tell me not to do the things that I'm thinking. So we can contribute $7,000 to our Roth IRA for the year of 2025. And I do have over $13,000 in my emergency fund alone. I have $28,000 plus in cash altogether, but those are across my various sinking funds, including my emergency fund. So I was like, I could just pull $7,000 from my emergency fund and go ahead and max out my Roth IRA. And I was heavily considering doing this. So that's what I asked in the group. I explained my situation and was like, would you pull from your emergency fund to max out your Roth IRA? It was a big no from everybody who answered, basically. I think there was like one person who kind of said, like, from their comment, it was basically suggesting that they would do that. They would probably pull from their emergency fund. But it did give me confirmation that I should not do that, and I will not do that. I'm going to keep my emergency fund where it's at. I think it would be different if I did have a 9-to-5 job and I wasn't self-employed, or if I was a much higher income earner on a consistent basis. But at this point, being new to self-employment and with where my money is at, like what I'm making on a monthly basis, how much I have left over for saving and investing on a monthly basis, it is better for me to keep that money in my emergency fund. It's also an emergency fund, and I should, I made a video recently on emergency funds, and I was like, that should only be used for emergencies. And me maxing out my Roth IRA is not an emergency. Sorry, I just said emergency like 6 times. But the reason this started coming up for me too is that I recently read an article about how we're obsessed with saving, and I agree with that, but at the same time, I don't. I feel that having a large savings is very comforting, and it does give you a lot of options with things. Like, I feel much more comfortable with my finances because I have so much saved up. Even though it would hurt to pull from my emergency fund for whatever reason, I know that that's there, and that's amazing. That's a great situation to be in, to where I'm not like stressing at night, But in that article, she was talking about how like we typically are probably saving more than we need to, because emergencies are either not that expensive or you have different options. This is kind of like what Big Earn, so early retirement now, he has, I can link these articles down below, by the way, but he is very against emergency funds. Like, he has $0 in his emergency fund because he counts like his investments technically are an emergency fund, or if you have a credit card, that can be for your emergency fund, and then you can replenish it either the following months with income that you make or from pulling from your brokerage account or whatever you have. And I remember several years ago listening to him on, I believe it was the Choose FI podcast, when he was talking about that, and I was like, whoa, this is This is so different than anything I've ever heard. I think it's absolutely very interesting, and I do recommend listening to it because it gives you a lot to think about. But I am somebody who prefers to have that savings. So yes, anyways, ultimately I decided not to do that. I'm not going to because of my situation. It does still bother me literally on a daily basis that I'm not investing more to my Roth IRA, that I am not able to just completely max it out right now. And then somebody in the Choose FI group, actually, I met him at FinCon. He was like, you could just save up for all of 2025 and then max it out in Q1 of 2026. And I was like, wait, that's kind of a good idea because then I'll have that in savings and at least it's gaining a little bit of interest. But then I'll have that satisfaction of completely maxing out my Roth IRA on the first of the month, even if it's for the previous year, and then I can repeat. So basically it would be just 2025 where things feel like I'm behind. So I was heavily considering that. But then I am in a mastermind group and I was talking to them and I was like, what do y'all think I should do? Like, should I just dollar cost average and contribute to my Roth IRA, whatever I can on a monthly basis? Or should I try out that, save up and then max it out Q1 of 2026? And they were like, no, just go ahead and invest it. And I was like, okay. So yeah, I appreciate getting everybody's opinion on it because sometimes you need that, like just other people's thoughts and opinions around financial decisions, even though I feel like I'm pretty financially savvy, obviously. So that's what I'll be doing. Not going to pull from my emergency fund. I am going to just invest or contribute what I can to my Roth IRA on a monthly basis. It is a bit frustrating because, like, for example, this month I wanted to contribute $500. The month isn't over, so I might still be able to do that, but then I won't if I do that, I won't have enough money to send the money for the house, for example, to my boyfriend. And that doesn't matter. Like, I could pay him on the 20th or whenever in the month. It's like, he does not like, oh, on the 1st, But I really don't like to do that. So far this year, I've just contributed $15 to my Roth IRA. And I'm not sure that the 500 is going to happen for January. So we'll see. And to me, that's just frustrating. Like, I know that I left my job and I know that I'm making less money. I knew that investing would slow down. It's just ever since I left my job, that's been kind of hard for me to accept. Like, yes, I'm in a much better place. Like, trust me, I don't want to go back to a 9 to 5, but I would just love to see my income increase so that I can continue to invest like I was before and save like I was before. So it's just going to take some time and also for me to get used to it mentally and just accept that I'm in this situation and that's okay. Top priority for me is that I'm able to pay for everything that I need to pay for, and that's what I'm doing. And then I also have my solo 401k that I am contributing to on a monthly basis plus matching through my business, so that makes me feel a bit better. But yeah, I just am having a hard time accepting that I can't max it out right now without pulling from my emergency fund, and I will not do that. The other thing I wanted to touch on is kind of similar, but I was having this conversation with my boyfriend a couple of weeks ago about how, I set all these big goals for myself and like I want to make this amount of income and I want to invest this much, blah, 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 all these financial goals, of course. But I was saying to him, like, it's also okay if I don't hit those goals, right? Like, I am somebody who is kind of hard on myself. Like, the self-doubt is definitely still real when it comes to self-employment. Like, it comes up more frequent than not, I would say. And overall, I'm doing quite well in the grand scheme of things, but obviously I want to be further than where I am right now. And so I take that out on me, like, you could be doing more, you could be doing this better, you need to go, 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 go. But the whole reason that I left my full-time job was so that I didn't feel that way. Like, I was so burnt out doing everything that I was doing. And really for me, the main struggle with a 9 to 5 job was that I was doing these things that I just simply did not care about. Like, it was so soul sucking to be working a job that was just completely unfulfilling. I didn't give a crap about what I was doing, what I was implementing. And it just doesn't feel good to do that for 40 plus hours in the week. So I love that I have control of my time. Everything that I'm doing is for me. But these external pressures that I put on myself, I'm not really serving myself by doing that. So I just had this conversation with him and have been thinking about, like, it's also okay if I don't hit those goals. And like, yeah, it would suck. I wouldn't feel great, but it's gonna be okay. You know, like I'm doing the best that I can. I probably could do better. We can always do better, right? But I am doing great, I would say, overall, and I'm able to pay for what I need to pay for. I'm still investing a little bit. I'm still saving a little bit. I haven't been pulling from my savings, that type of thing. So, yeah, I brought this up with a couple of my clients too because it was just relevant to our conversation. But really, the most important thing is that we are living our life. Like at the end of the day, money is not that important. Like, yes, as I've talked about before, money makes things easier. I think having a lot of money is an amazing thing because it gives you a lot of opportunities. It gives you a lot of peace of mind. And y'all know how I feel about like being wealthy, being rich. That's something I want sooner rather than later. Made a video on that. But we also have to enjoy life. So for me, if I'm having some downtime because I'm reading a book or because I'm watching TV with my boyfriend or whatever the case may be, that is okay. And it's okay for me to not be grinding, hustling on my work 24/7. So I am trying to give myself grace with that. Like it's okay if I don't reach 120K income. I really hope I do. The other thing too is that hard work doesn't necessarily equal more money. Like we see that all the time. You know, there's people who work 3 jobs and they're barely scraping by, even though they're working super, super hard. That doesn't equate to money. It's about, there's so much more to it than that, you know? And I do really just want to live life, enjoy my life, be happy, and take advantage of being self-employed. And that means just, you know, doing whatever it is that I want to do. And that goes for anybody, you know, like if you feel like you've been putting a lot of pressure on yourself to achieve any sort of financial goals, like it's okay. If we don't hit these goals, you don't have to put that crazy amount of pressure on you for whatever it is that you're going after. So yeah, those were the main 2 things that I wanted to touch on because those are like the 2 things I've really been struggling with so far this year. And I know that it's just going to take time to get through this, but like to get through these thoughts. And I don't feel like super depressed about it or anything. It's just constantly on my mind, I suppose. And I'm trying not to have it just always floating there. So work in progress. And now let me go through some of these questions. Okay, I'm going to start with the first question to the most recent. So from Polly PhD, preparation for uncertainty when politics are changing. I don't know that I'm the best person to answer this. I don't know that, yeah, it's just really unknown, I suppose. Like you said it yourself, uncertainty. You know what? Actually, I think I am a good person to answer this. What I would say is you need to look out for you. Like we need to be looking out for ourselves and for our, you know, the people that you care about. Nobody else cares about you. Whoever is the president, whoever's in Congress, whatever, they don't care about us as individuals. You know, we need to look out for ourselves. I know that's kind of black and white thinking, but truly you need to look out for yourself. And I would say to make that a top priority, especially when it comes to finances. So I would say if you have debt, like you need to be paying that down. Maybe not like mortgage debt or that type of thing, but if you have high interest debt, if you have a car loan, like if something is costing you money on a monthly basis, work on paying that down. Life gets so much easier when you're debt free. I'm still a firm believer of that. A mortgage is obviously different, but everything else, if you don't have those payments, it's just going to be so much easier to get to where you're trying to go or just get on top of all of these things and prevent further debt. I would say work on increasing your income as well and reducing your spending. Like if you are buying crap that you do not need and you are struggling financially, like something needs to be done about that, you know? Keep your spending in check, increase your income, widen that gap. I've talked about this many, many times before. So if you can increase your income, decrease your spending, or just maintain that spending, avoid lifestyle creep, you will be so much further. So then you can start saving more money. I do think that an emergency fund should be prioritized. I have my video on the emergency fund and it just is up to you on what that number is, what you're comfortable with. Everybody's situation is different. I know somebody asked about like shifting focus as well with saving because of the political situation. So I'll get to that. But yeah, I think just saving more and investing more is going to help overall. We can't control a lot of the things that are happening right now. So you can control your spending. You can work on controlling your income by increasing your income, producing more streams of income. You can pay down debt and for the most part prevent going into further debt just by being more financially savvy and financially stable. And I would say continue to educate yourself. So control what you can control and we'll be all right. It is uncertain, but you know, we don't know. That's just the whole point of it, I suppose. Shout out to my_budget_life for several questions here. So she has her channel, by the way, y'all can go subscribe. So she first asked, how much is too much money sitting in an emergency fund when it could be put to other savings goals or investing? This can't be answered because everybody has different feelings around this. You know, personal finance is personal. If you want 100K in your emergency fund, that's probably too much. If you look at the opportunity cost of saving that versus investing that. But who am I to say that that's too much for somebody who, you know, has 3 kids and X amount that they need to pay for on a monthly basis, and in the past they were laid off and it took them over a year to get a job, and you know, maybe that's what they need to feel comfortable because of what they went through in their situation. So I don't think there's any amount that is too much. So yeah, sorry, I do not have a figure to give here. I would say for myself, anything beyond a year of bare bones living expenses, so maybe for me like $36,000, anything beyond that is too much in cash. I would say too much in savings, and I would want to invest it. So 36,000 plus my sinking funds is fine. But beyond that, I would want to be investing. The other thing too with savings, luckily right now, high yield savings account have a pretty decent rate, but obviously those are kind of dropping right now. But there are other options like a money market account. You could make a little bit more, or you could put your money into a brokerage account. And yes, you risk losing some money, but if you have a solid chunk in your cash emergency fund, your high yield savings account emergency fund, and then you choose to put a large chunk into your brokerage, you'll probably be fine. Like at least you have that high yield savings account money to tap into. And then, you know, at this point, we don't know, nobody ever knows where the market is going to go. But if something were to happen and the market were to crash and you were to lose some money in your brokerage account, you at least have that cash cushion to fall back on. And then eventually that brokerage should grow. Her next question, should people start investing if they still have high interest debt? So this is just my opinion around this, obviously not financial advice. And also I don't have a straightforward answer because it depends on your situation. So if I would say it is okay to invest if you have high interest debt in your employer plan. So like a 401k or 403b, if your employer offers a match, if you're somebody who doesn't go into further debt each month, you're not living paycheck to paycheck or like struggling to pay for bills, you're not making your budget and going negative each month, basically. I think that's fine to have high interest debt, but still contribute to your 401k or employer plan because they're offering a match. There are some exceptions to that though, like if the money is not vested immediately, meaning you're not going to get that match immediately, or any sort of like fine print around that, I would be careful and not be contributing to your 401k in that situation. But if you're vested immediately, meaning whatever the company matches, you, like if you were to leave the job, you get that money still no matter what, I think contribute up to the match and focus on paying down that high interest debt. In my opinion, that's completely fine, and I do recommend that because that's part of your compensation and technically it's free money. So take advantage of that while you can. However, if you don't have an employer plan with a match and you have high interest debt, I wouldn't be investing because you're going to have a larger return on your money by paying off that high interest debt versus what you're going to make in the market. I mean, there's some exceptions to that. Like this last year, we can see that the S&P 500 was, you know, there was major growth there, but you're going to just be better off by paying down that debt. Like that money is working against you. Focus on paying that down heavily, and then you can move on to investing. She also asked how to afford travel/experiences when you feel your budget is tight. Honestly, try to find experiences that cost little to no money. You can still have fun without spending much money. Even if it's things like, oh, you found a local farmer's market, or we're going to the carnival and that's, you know, it's not too expensive, those types of things. I don't know, at least for me, I find like those simple things in life, like taking walks at the park or just shopping around at a farmer's market, just walking around, hanging out, grabbing a coffee with somebody. Those experiences to me are better. Like that's what I prefer over like something crazy. For travel, I would recommend taking advantage of credit cards if you're a responsible credit card user. So if you have expenses coming up where you know that you're going to spend quite a bit of money, open up a travel credit card and something with a big bonus, and you should be able to get a decent amount that will cover like a flight or two. Travel also doesn't have to be that expensive. There are options out there where you can, so if you're somebody who's like solo traveling, that's going to be there's different options out there, and obviously like you have to consider the safety measures and stuff. There are those options out there where you can like stay in somebody's home. Like you can either house sit for them and go and like vacation in that country, and like basically you get to stay for free because you're pet sitting for them or house sitting for them. I can't even remember what the websites are, but the other option too, you can go and work for like these families. I think a lot of them are farm owners or that sort of thing. So you can go and travel there and then work for them while getting to stay in their home. So I know that there's some like safety risk with that, but the people on these websites, from my understanding, are like screened and stuff. Traveling with a group of people may also be helpful. So if y'all can split the cost of staying in an Airbnb or a hotel, whatever, I find that Airbnbs are more affordable. Flights are expensive these days. Like no matter what, they are very expensive. Even just flying within like domestic in the US. Sometimes it's actually even more affordable to fly overseas, I've noticed, like especially in the Caribbean, anything like that. That's more affordable than flying to like Wyoming. I mean, what are y'all's tips for saving on traveling? Would love to hear it down below. For the most part, that's something that I've like worked on saving up for. It's also a cost that I split. Like typically when I'm traveling, it's with my boyfriend, so we split it, and that's really helpful. We always go through Airbnb if we're renting a car. Sometimes it's through the major rental places, but we'll do Turo, Turo, and that seems to be a bit more affordable oftentimes. We no longer Uber to the airport because that's more expensive. We pay for parking at like this it's like off the campus a little bit of the airport, and then they shuttle you to the airport for free, and that saves us like quite a bit by just paying for that instead of Ubering to the airport there and back. Also, don't underestimate the fun of like a road trip or even a staycation. So you could go somewhere either in your state or a state nearby. If you're in the United States, obviously. I mean, in other countries, like if you live in Europe, I feel like you have it the best. Like you can go to like just take a train and go to all of these places. For the United States, we have to like drive or fly. Like it's pretty hard, I feel, to get around here. And then obviously going overseas is a lot more expensive. But yeah, I find road trips really fun, and they're a bit more affordable in my opinion, just depending on like what car you drive, that type of thing. And then finding like an Airbnb for a couple of nights or one of those little like getaway cabins. I don't know, I feel like those are fun too. Like it doesn't have to always be a big travel. I know I really enjoy traveling, so that's just something that I prioritize for. So if you're not already saving for it, obviously that's going to help too. Like that's a big thing in our life, so that's why I prioritized saving for that before I left my job. She also asked, is home ownership overrated? I'm gonna say yes and no. I think yes, in the fact that it doesn't make you that much money at the end of the day. There's been so many videos on this and people talking about how like if you're living in your primary home, right, you're probably going to put quite a bit of money into it on top of the mortgage that you're paying, on top of the interest, the closing costs, blah, blah, blah. Closing costs? I think I said closing costs. Closing costs. Yeah, so if you put any maintenance into the home, but then you go, a few years later, you sell the house and you gained, I don't know, 100K in equity. Like, did you really? Not always. So sure, maybe if you bought at a really good time, but for a lot of people, if you've bought a house in the last few years, it's probably not going to equate to much in the next few years, if that makes sense. So to me, it can be somewhat overrated for sure. On the other hand, I think what is nice about it is like you have a lot of control over what you do. If you're living in an apartment, if you're living in an apartment, there's typically people above you or below you, and that was really annoying to me to like hear people stomping upstairs, or like they randomly would start vacuuming the hallways, which, I appreciate them cleaning, but I would be like filming or something and they're vacuuming right at my door, dogs barking left and right of me, and yeah, that's just a pain. Also, people don't care about their space as much as you do, for example, and so they may like it can get dirty in the apartment or the shared spaces, and yeah, to me that was frustrating. Also, like, yeah, you could probably paint the home or put holes in the wall, that type of thing, but you're either going to lose your deposit or you're going to have to paint it back. So that's harder in an apartment. If you're renting from a landlord, that's the other thing too. Like you don't have control over those things. If you need something fixed, sometimes it's not prioritized, or you may even be responsible for it even though you feel like you shouldn't be. So yeah, it's things like that where it's kind of just like having something of your own. So it may be overrated finance wise. Like to me, renting isn't a waste of money. I've said that many times before. I rented on my own for 4 years, and I don't see that as a waste of money. Sure, it costs a lot, but I was living there. You know, I spent a lot of time there. I was working from home for the most part. So I think it was worth it, and I really enjoyed my time, and it was not a waste of money. So I really don't like when people say that. Buying a house is not easy these days. So yeah, I just think overall, don't feel bad if you don't have a house yet, but I don't think it's a bad thing to go after. It's just, but so many people are like, it's an investment, when at the end of the day, it may not be, just depending on your situation. Kate asks, where do you channel leftover cash at the end of the month? For example, you budgeted $400 for groceries and spent $300. Do you keep it in your account / immediately invest? Add to savings? Same question for leftover money and sinking funds at the end of the year. I'm going to answer this kind of backwards. So with my sinking funds, if I have money still in there, I just let it stay in there. My gift sinking fund, that just keeps going, you know. Some of them get completely depleted, like my car insurance sinking fund, because I use that on a regular basis, but I don't care if there's leftover money. And so if there's leftover money and you no longer need that sinking fund, just roll it into whatever your next priority sinking fund is, or put it to your emergency fund or something, or invest it. If there is leftover cash at the end of the month, honestly, I really don't run into this too often because I do zero-based budgeting. So for the most part, all of my money, anything that I earn in the month is also spent in that month as well, even if it's on investing or savings, you know? So I usually just don't let that happen. I have a very small cushion in my checking account. I prefer to keep it that way. I just don't like losing money just by having it in my checking account. Personal preference, not advice. So that's what I would suggest first, is like when you're making your budget, if you have your set income, you know, make it a zero-based budget. So if you're subtracting all of your expenses from your income, that number should basically be zero. And then you can answer your own question. You can decide what to do with any leftover money. So after you've budgeted all of your essential expenses, your variable expenses, everything that you need to pay for in the month, and then if you have money left over from all of that, the things you need to pay for, that can be put toward investments or put toward savings, and you determine that number. So yes, I would say anything left over, I would put toward whatever goal I'm working toward, which would be saving and investing. So hopefully I answered that how you wanted me to. Kat, she asked, do you and Sebastian sit down and have money chats? Honestly, not really. We don't like have any planned money chats. He's also not as into finances as I am. I think most people aren't. So he's good with his money because he just doesn't really spend that much money. Like he buys his groceries, he'll buy some personal things here and there. But for the most part, most of his money just gets saved and invested. So he doesn't even budget. I've made him a budget before, like he uses my spreadsheet, but it's not like he's tracking his spending or anything. It was just to like get a picture of his monthly expenses and what that looks like. Does he have room for XYZ type of thing? So we really don't sit down for any sort of scheduled money chats, but it comes up here and there. Like we'll talk about how we want to increase our income, or like how we can make that happen, how we can make some extra income, the things that we should purchase for the home or focus on next. Those are things that we talk about, but it's never like, okay, today's agenda, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. And since we're not married, our expenses are separated. We don't have any sort of joint accounts together at this point, which we're both completely fine with. So yeah, there's no like talk of, oh, we should be investing this much together into this, you know, like everything is just completely separated. But he'll update me when he adds money to his Roth IRA, or I'm always like, guess what my net worth is? And I'm annoying about it, you know? Veronica asks, how can you budget or prep for any taxes you may have to pay from receiving bank account bonuses? I assume just save 10% of the bonus made, but I'd love to hear your opinion. So I honestly don't worry about this. So let me first say that yes, when you receive a bonus from opening these checking accounts, or even if you get like referrals for credit cards that you're using, that type of thing, it is taxable. And that money, that income is just going to go on top of your earned income that you already make. So whatever tax bracket you fall under is basically what you would be saving to be prepared for that. But I find that this is never an issue. If you are making like 10,000 extra from opening these accounts, which would be really tough, that's a different story. But if you're making like 400 here, 300 there, like that's not going to make a huge difference when it comes to your taxes. And it's not something that you would even face any sort of like penalty for. Like if you end up owing taxes, you probably won't have any sort of fee. It's not going to be because of opening these accounts, you know, like $800 from the year isn't going to be like, oh no, you were trying to avoid paying your taxes. You're not going to get in trouble for that. Speaking from personal experience, depending on your situation, even if you are making money from these account bonuses, you may still just like get your tax refund, you know, like you just have to report this as income. You may get a little bit less of a tax refund. You may owe a little bit on your taxes, but it's never been anything that I've been like super unprepared for, you know? So if you want to, sure, you can put aside like 20% of that bonus. But it's not something that I do. Obviously, I do report that as income. You should receive a 1099 from these companies. I report that as income, but it's just never been an issue for me to just, you know, tack it on top of my income for the year. Just B123. She asked things to keep in mind if budgeting as a single for women. I would say it's the same budgeting tips that I offer across like all my videos, you know, just keep budgeting, track your spending, and I would have a little bit more in savings. If you're by yourself, it is harder. Your expenses are going to be higher, all of those things. So I would just build up that emergency fund. I honestly don't know that there's much more than that, you know, like it's going to be the same tips that I would have for anybody. Like it depends on your situation. An emergency fund is great. Having a solid sinking fund plan is really helpful. I do really prefer to, you know, make sure that I'm independent with things. Like if something were to ever happen, I will be good. I think a lot of women should prioritize that, you know, so whether you're in a relationship right now and you may become single, or if you're a single parent, you know, like I think it's so important for you to be financially steady, even if that takes some time to get to. And I'm a firm believer that if you're single and you're going to go into a relationship, like just maintain that sense of independence. Like it's okay to depend on your partner for some things, of course. Everybody's opinion on this is a bit different, but I do think it's very important for us to be good on our own. Again, I would love to hear from y'all what you think. Any ladies out there who have any suggestions to keep in mind when it comes to budgeting as a single person. But I feel like it's no different than what I always talk about in general. Because I feel like I do budget as a single person, especially like when I lived alone. If you go back and watch my videos from 2019 to 2023, I was alone. Nobody was paying for anything that I was paying for. I paid for my apartment on my own. Everything was on my own. Even now, like, yes, we split the house, but I pay for everything else on my own, like the groceries, and that's just for me. So Abigail asked, finding the balance between investing and saving for a home, currently struggling with wanting to prioritize both. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning, where it's like I really want to, I mean, my income is lower than it was before, so I really want to be able to save money right now. I want to be able to max out my Roth IRA sooner rather than later. I want to be blah, blah, blah. It's hard. It's hard to figure out what to do. I would say if you can just make a plan, like making the annual budget is huge. See what's even possible. When it comes to investing, like, yeah, you could invest a whole lot into your brokerage account, but I would focus on what's top priority to you, you know, like with investing. So when you're making your annual budget, you're looking at, you know, all of your income for the year and all of your expenses for the year. And if you have the goal of max out your Roth IRA, max out your 401k, it looks like from your thumbnail or from your picture that you are married. So maybe the both of y'all want to do that. So when you're making your annual budget, make sure it's both of your incomes, all of your expenses, including those goals, the 401k, Roth IRA, whatever it is that you want to invest in, right? And if you're maxing those out, start with those numbers first. And then if whatever, after all of your other expenses, if you want to save for a home, what's left over for that? And then if you're like, wait, that doesn't feel good, you can adjust from there and kind of like balance it out. Like maybe we don't need to max out our 401k. Instead, we could put 10K more to saving for a house, you know? So I think just planning out the whole year is what's really going to help. And then you should get a better picture of what's even possible. It is a struggle wanting to prioritize multiple goals at once, but that just kind of doesn't ever go away from my experience. The Aggress, your take on current and future tax implications and how you plan to structure investments for them. They also asked about military retirement. I have no clue. I am not the person to ask about military stuff, so I won't answer that. With taxes, so with my investments, I really like a kind of a balanced approach. So my plan going forward, if I can, is to max out my Roth IRA every year. So I do like the Roth IRA versus the traditional IRA. But when I'm contributing to my 401k, that is my traditional 401k. So that allows me to save some money on taxes now. And then obviously I'll have to pay taxes when I pull from that in the future. But I like having that balance of traditional for the 401k and then Roth IRA. And yeah, that's kind of how I handle the taxes of that. And then obviously I have my brokerage account and I just add a little bit to that here and there throughout the year. So I'm really not stressed about it. I do invest 100% in stocks at this point, so mostly like VTSAX, various ETFs through Vanguard. And then as I get older, like basically not until I hit 50 is when I would start like adding in some bonds and that sort of thing. But that's not even answering, like talking about this. Moses mentioned, let's talk about investing, life in Georgia. I feel like I vlog my life on my lifestyle channel, so you can see some glimpses of Georgia, but Georgia's just Georgia. It's nothing exciting here, honestly. Books, that was a pretty good job you did in book club. I will take this opportunity to shout out my nonfiction book club. So we meet once a month. For the month of February, I just announced this today in the email, we will be reading The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. I've actually read it before, but it's been some time since I read it, and I love it so much, and I think more people should read it. So that will be a book for February. If you want to join my book club, I'll have it linked down below. Linda asked, will you bring back viewers' budget reviews? I don't know if you mean like the emails that I was getting, but I will not bring those back. It was a lot of effort for, it wasn't really worth it. So it would take a lot of time for me to prepare for those, like reading through everything and planning things out. It would take me a long time, like over an hour to film those videos. And then it would take me several hours to edit them. And then I would barely make money from those videos. The other thing too is I kept like, I would miss something, like I would make a mistake or just like forget to adjust a number as I was planning those things out, and it would like frustrate me so much. So I don't think I'll bring those back. Same thing with the podcast episodes where I had people on and I was like coaching them through. Those were a lot of work for not a lot of results. So I may still do like a check-in with the people I already spoke to, but I'm still not too sure about that, just because those are another one that's like, it's a lot of time to prep for, to have the call, to edit it, and it just wasn't worth it to me. It was taking a lot of my energy, I suppose I should say. Connie, she asked, any tips on how to manage money when you and your partner both have ADHD? So she went on and mentioned we were looking at cars and spontaneously bought one. Like, girl, don't. So Connie, I've worked with her and her husband before. So I don't have ADHD. I don't know that I'm the best person to give any advice on this. So I'm going to ask y'all again. If you have ADHD, what are your tips on managing finances? Actually, this was a topic. So Michael from Midlife Money Moves, we started a podcast together, if you don't know. And the other day, our most recent one that we filmed was on ADHD, because he has ADHD. And like I said, I do not. So that's what we talked about. That episode won't be up for another few weeks, but he did give some like his tips on managing money, because that was part of the reason why he got into a bad financial situation, was like being impulsive and being overwhelmed with finances. I would say for this situation, because she mentioned that they went to go look at cars and then spontaneously bought one, avoid those situations, you know? And I think that's where, because I can't understand that. I don't have ADHD. So for me to understand, like, why did you go and look at cars in the first place if that wasn't in the plan? You know, it's just not something I would do. If I were to, maybe I go to the car dealership to get an oil change or something, and I may walk around just waiting for, you know, my oil change, and I may look at cars, but I know that that's not in the plan right now. So like, I wouldn't ever make that spontaneous decision. And now I don't know if that's because I don't have ADHD or if it's just like the structure of my thought process, my plan, my brain, I suppose. But yeah, I would say that's one thing, is like avoiding those situations. And then as far as I know, when Michael was talking about this, he was saying how oftentimes what happens is like something bad happens in the month. Like you go over budget in one category, so then it's like, oh, everything is effed basically, you know, and it does not need to be that way. Like it's just probably something that would take some time to like build a habit out of. Like, it's okay for things to go wrong here and there, but it doesn't mean somebody made a short on this recently because I think she's like a workout person, but it was like, oh, I missed the gym today, or I ate really bad today, so now for the rest of the week I'm gonna eat terrible. And then what she did in her short, it was like she was pouring milk and some spilled, and she was like, oh man, like she poured the rest of the jug out, which was very wasteful. But she was doing that for a number of things. If I can find that video, I'll post it up here. But yeah, it's kind of like that, where it's like if something happens, it doesn't need to set off everything else. I have worked with a lot of people that do have ADHD. I am very glad to see that oftentimes they love my spreadsheets. So Connie, I know you have my spreadsheet, so that's good. I like a very simple approach. I know even for me, like I find those like too many colors on spreadsheets or too many things happening on the spreadsheet is very overwhelming. So simplifying and finding what works best for you is very important, and just kind of getting into routine. Like routine, I would say, is probably a big thing to kind of prevent that. I don't know. I don't think I'm the best person to answer this because I don't know what it's like to have ADHD. So yeah, I'm going to ask y'all to answer that, to give some tips on handling finances when you have ADHD. All right, and then final question comes from Alexa. First of all, she said, love your content. Thank you so much, Alexa. I have been having second thoughts on my 2025 goals after seeing the latest political headlines. My top goal was to pay off $20,000 in debt this year, but now I'm pondering if I should switch to saving aggressively, especially with me being just a single earner with no partner. Would love to hear your take on this. So I talked on this a bit when I was answering a couple of questions. I think paying off $20,000 in debt is amazing. It depends. Like if that's high interest debt, I would still prioritize that. Like that will help you even in this political situation, you know? However, if you're feeling unstable at all with your job, that's a big thing. Layoffs are rampant. Actually, I meant to say this in this video. The company I used to work for, they had some budget cuts. I saw this on LinkedIn, and a couple of people lost their jobs at the job that I was at. So that's pretty crazy. I could have been laid off at this point. Not something I expected from that company because they have grown very slowly. It's a very small company. There's like 60 employees, and they were always growing at a healthy rate. At least that's what they always were talking about. But I saw multiple people from that company posting that they were in the market. And one person put like, there were budget cuts, I'm losing my job February 3rd. So yeah, so that's kind of crazy. And obviously like my boyfriend lost his job in 2024. I knew multiple people. So many of my clients lost their jobs. And yeah, I know it's tough out there. So if you feel that way, if you feel that your job, and we probably don't even know, like jobs are, we don't know the status of them, but certain jobs you can be for sure. Like you're good to go, you know? So I would look at that. If you feel uncertain at all about your job, I would focus on saving more. And then kind of just balance that with paying down your debt. I mean, even if you can pay off $10,000 of debt, like that's amazing. If you have high interest debt, I would focus on paying that down. But if this is like $20,000 of student loans, I would, you know, writing it out is absolutely acceptable, and instead focus on savings. I think we are facing a lot of uncertainty. And times are just weird right now. Things are expensive. Things are tough out there, and I understand that. So, yeah, I would not be opposed. Like, it's okay to change your goals. So I would say to save more depending on your situations. Again, apologies, I don't have a straightforward answer on that just because I have no clue. Obviously, none of us do, but just control what you can control. All right, I have been talking for an hour now, so I'm gonna shut up. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to expand on. I'm happy to. I would really appreciate if there's any thoughts or opinions that you have about the things that I touched on this video, the questions. I would love to see responses. That's super helpful. But otherwise, thank you all so much for the questions, first of all, and thank you so much for watching. If you're still watching the video to this point, can you leave a comment or include in your comment an alien emoji? Thank you if you've made it this far, because I know this is super long. But thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.